Chapter 15. Stomping through the snow, Andorn tried to hurry the others up. The two captives were likely to come around any time soon, and wriggling prisoners were harder to deal with than non-wriggling ones. He wanted them safely locked up in two very different places before they regained their full capacity. It didn't help that Mira had insisted on looting everything of worth from the thugs. Admittedly, Saria had persuaded her to leave some for the farmers to find, and used to put the cottages right again, especially given that they'd broken the back door of one of them. Yarlin had been no better. Now carrying a new sword belt and several other trinkets he had decided he liked the look of. But Mira had also spotted something he might have missed in his haste, a small letter pouch the ringleader had kept just inside his shirt. It would hopefully provide some of the much-needed answers. The money was a boon as well. Although the mayor was finally paying them, they'd spent plenty of money on the equipment they'd needed, and one of Andorn's daggers was notched, something he'd need to get a smith to deal with if he wanted to keep his weapons as battle-ready as possible. Saria had gone through plenty of arrows as well, and it was only right they saw them replaced, especially when her arrow had saved Yarlin's life. They were still trudging through the forest, both he and Yarlin carrying a man each, when Andorn felt his captive begin to stir, the body wriggling on his shoulder. It was the thug Mira had knocked out, but even if he was just a generic brute, he was still one of their men and might know something. Andorn stopped and chucked him to the ground. The movement and cold snow finished reviving the man. He coughed and wriggled, blindfolded and bound.
"Let me go," the man said. "I promise I'll skedaddle. Won't cause any more problems."
"No," Andorn said. "Get to your feet. You've got some questions to answer." The man didn't move, looking towards Andorn's voice. "Come on, get up." Andorn kicked out at him. The ruffian yelped, but only moved out of the way.
"Look, I don't know anything. I just followed orders. You want our boss, swarthy guy, bit of an accent, fancied himself a bit of a toff. Some kind of education. Thought he could rise above the normal way of things, get a station in one of them big houses."
"We've got him too. Now I won't ask again. On your feet, or I'll drag you the rest of the way."
"Now that ain't no way to treat a man. I just want to go. It's not like I wanted to attack."
Andorn grew weary of the thug's whining voice, and could see Yarlin grew equally tired of carrying the other man. He stomped in the snow and grabbed the rope around the man's wrists. Before anyone could stop him or the thug could waffle any more, Andorn strode through the forest, dragging the man along on his back. He yelped and squealed as he was pulled through the snow. After several minutes of this, Andorn stopped again. "Now do you want to walk?" he asked. Instantly the man scrambled to his feet. Andorn caught sight of his back as he did, noticing several fresh cuts on it, and the slightly blue skin that had been frozen by the snow. It had to hurt. For a moment, he felt a little cruel. But then he remembered what this man had done to others, and what they'd all been planning to do to the town. Instantly, all sympathy vanished. Andorn drove the group on a little faster, feeling for Yarlin, but wanting to keep an eye on the ringleader as Yarlin carried him. They were still a few minutes from the clearing when Andorn noticed the ringleader being sly. He was awake, but pretending to still be out cold. Andorn hadn't noticed until Yarlin walked over a particularly large tree root and thudded down the other side, bouncing his charge around. For a moment the man's hands braced against Yarlin's back before going limp again, the way an unconscious person wouldn't. Andorn pointed at the man to get everyone's attention, not saying a word as they carried on walking. He then motioned with his hands opening and closing and pointed to the fingers dangling down Yarlin's back. Saria and Thorgrim quickly noticed what was going on. Immediately Thorgrim added a bit of speed to his pace and came alongside Yarlin. Using similar hand signals, he passed the message on, letting Yarlin know that at any moment his charge was going to decide to act. Thankfully the man was unarmed and blindfolded, but Andorn knew that if he wriggled, he could still do a lot of harm to Yarlin. They needed to think of something, and fast. But Yarlin took matters into his own hands. As they came towards the clearing and Yarlin was stepping over a large branch in the path, he rocked backwards and let the ruffian boss slide over that way, landing in a tangled heap of limbs despite trying to catch himself. He let out an oof as he was dumped, making it clear he was awake.
"Right. You can walk the rest of the way as well,"
Yarlin said, grabbing the end of the rope that tied the thug's wrists.
"And before you start protesting and begging to be let go, you should just know the last guy who did that got dragged several hundred meters on his back and soon wished he'd just done as we asked."
For a moment, no one moved, but then the leader got to his feet and let Yarlin lead him. Andorn still kept a close eye on him, not wanting to give the craftier man an opportunity to escape or hurt one of his friends, not when they were so close to having him locked up and getting some answers. Just as they entered the clearing and Yarlin adjusted his course to avoid the tent, the ringleader made his move. He yanked himself to the left, clearly not realizing there was a canvas tent that way. Although he moved so quickly, he managed to pull out of Yarlin's grasp. He crashed into the fabric construction and immediately fell onto the sturdy material. That section of the tent collapsed, spilling him downwards until he smacked into the ground, and tangled himself with the slack ropes and material in his haste to try and get away. Andorn laughed as their job was done for them, and the tent entangled the would-be runaway further. Eventually, he and Yarlin waded in to pull their captive out and take him into the hut. Muttering, Thorgrim tried to repair the tent, but it wasn't until Mira slipped inside to help from within that it even came close to returning to the shape it had been before. Andorn took the ringleader into the hut, picking the sturdiest room in the building to house the man. It wouldn't be perfect, and it wouldn't hold the guy forever, but for now, it would do. Saria fetched one of the chairs without him needing to ask, and Andorn quickly tied the thug to it, making sure the bindings were tight. More than once, the man sucked his breath in between his teeth in pain, but Andorn ignored the almost silent protest. Yarlin took his own captive into the room beside it and did the same. Only when the two were secure did Andorn step back into the hallway where he could see both. Yarlin and Saria joined him.
"What do we do with them now?"
she asked, whispering so they couldn't hear her.
"We get them to tell us what they know. I reckon if we can play them off each other, we'll get an idea which is most likely to tell the truth,"
Yarlin replied, but Andorn held out his hand to stop the sailor going back to the ringleader. "I want to read these letters first. Let them sit and wonder what's going to happen for a while. A little hunger and anxiety should help us get them to spill the beans." Saria nodded as if this made sense, but Yarlin opened his mouth as if to argue. Andorn didn't give him a chance, asking both of them to watch a ruffian each before he walked off. Settling down on the mattress in the only other room in the hut, Andorn pulled open the letter pouch. In much the same way some of the other thugs had carried letters with orders, this pouch contained similar ones. The ringleader had been instructed to set up at the particular farm and hire a set amount of men to aid him in the search for the eternal flame. It was nothing new, but it was a new handwriting, and it showed that there was someone above the guy sitting in their dining room. Someone was bankrolling this, and by the hand, Andorn would have said it was someone with a decent education. He read through the letters one by one, using the context and worn edges of the letters to help him decide the order. It was clear that the thug wasn't meant to have kept them. More than once, the person writing the letters had instructed the ringleader to burn them once he was done. But that begged the question, why hadn't he? Especially once he knew they'd come to attack the cottages. The guy had been fleeing. Why not burn the letters then? The cottage had even had lit fires. Perhaps he wanted someone else to take the fall if things went wrong. Or perhaps he hadn't been satisfied with something and planned to double-cross his employer. Whatever the reason, Andorn was going to need to work it out. Putting the letters safe, Andorn decided to finally have a little chat. He relieved Saria, letting her go and get some rest, before he walked into the small room. The thug hadn't moved, still tied tightly to the chair. "Quite the little story these letters paint," Andorn said, deciding to make it clear what he already knew, and what there was no point lying about.
"Feel free to read 'em. Damn job. Wish I'd never taken it."
"So why don't you tell me about the guy who hired you, and we'll see if we can sort him out."
No, sneak. I may think he's an idiot who's bitten off more than he can chew and doesn't pay well enough, but he's still the boss, and I still promise to do my best and get the job done. I'm not going to tell you what else I know. Don't bother asking. I've got a reputation to uphold.
Andorn frowned, knowing it was one of the more stubborn positions to be in. It gave him very little wiggle room to get the guy to talk. You have any idea why this mystery letter writer wants you doing all this? What grudge he has against the townfolk?
You'll have to ask him that. I just see the men get paid and do whatever task we're instructed to.
Not sure I believe that. These letters imply you may have a bit more say than that, and some clear decision-making in whom you hire. Almost a mini ringleader. I'm sure some of the bigger elements of this operation are dictated to you, but the control, sacrifice, and execution of the plan is coming from you. The thug harumphed and tried to be casual, but Andorn could see he was getting under the man's skin, his grip on the armchair making his knuckles a little whiter. But despite the discomfort, nothing else Andorn said could get the thug to talk. As the day slipped away from them, Andorn gave up. These things were often better once everyone involved had slept a little, and had time to think of the seriousness of what was going on. Being tied to a chair would help focus those particular thoughts as well. Once Andorn had given up, he came out of the room to find Yarlin, Mira, and Saria sitting in the corner of the other spare room, playing some kind of a game. It wasn't one he recognized to look at, but Saria just then bowed out, as a wolf howled in the background. Andorn began to expect why. A moment later, she grabbed her bow and pack.
I'm going to do a quick patrol of the forest, she said. Make sure there's no stray thugs to deal with.
Andorn followed her out to the porch. Be careful, he said, having an idea of what she truly intended to do. Don't take an unnecessary risk, and show caution when you return. The others might not entirely understand.
I can handle the last part, Saria said, but the rest will have to be up to the gods.
Didn't think you bought into the holy faith of Thorgrim, Andorn said, teasing as much as trying to get to know her.
I don't, but something is different about this wolf,
she said. It was the last word before she stepped out into the night, and the only one that confirmed she was thinking about the packless animal and why that might be so. In all his years, he'd only ever witnessed the bond between a ranger-like elf and another animal once before. A part of him was so curious he considered following her, but he knew if she was doing as he expected, then it would only get in the way and put them both in a little more danger. Instead, he settled back, listening for the two men they'd captured. It was highly likely at least one of them would try and escape, but which one, and when? And would Saria be back before then? Only time would tell.